Story. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor takes place between the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, or to be more precise, between the cinematic adoptions of the novels, as Shadow of Mordor is a new story penned by the writers at Monolith and Warner Bros. Games. The story tells the tale of Talion, voiced by Troy Baker, one of the Rangers defending the Black Wall. After he and his family are murdered by Sauron's forces, he is exiled from death, and his soul and fate are fused with that of Celebrimbor, voiced by Alistair Duncan, whom also seeks vengeance against Sauron and his forces. The curse that binds them both together grants Talion the use of Celebrimbor's wraith abilities, and together they must fight through Mordor and find the answers and vengeance they are longing for. Whilst the plot of Shadow of Mordor isn't exactly at the level of the books, it fully embraces the lore of the series itself, and it does reclaim the feeling that the books/films had by setting a similar tone. Thanks to its characters and background lore, Shadow of Mordor sets up an interesting story, though the third act may lose the interest of some. Presentation. Mordor takes place in the title-based location of Mordor. Much of its areas are surrounded by dark and grey rock, with many ruins which the Uruks inhabit. There are some more colourful areas in the game itself, though this is mainly due to the differences in vegetation and lighting. The grey presentation of many of its areas isn't really a bad thing though, as it embraces the same visual style that the films presented them in. Though of course we get to see much more of it in more detail, considering the story takes place in this single area. When the game does switch over to a more colourful setting, the visuals do pop, and the design of some of the areas and characters is quite impressive. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor is definitely a casualty of cross-generation programming. Whilst the PC and next-gen editions of the game do look good in their own right, they often pale in comparison to other cross-generation games that we've experienced so far. Environment textures are often less detailed than you'd expect, and the draw distance often leaves more to be desired. The character models do seem to stand out in a positive way, as the team at Monolith deliver highly detailed character models with impressive textures. Talion and his enemies are well crafted from a design perspective, and in close-ups it's hard not to appreciate the work that's gone into their models. Gameplay. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor's gameplay may include many existing familiar mechanics, but its unique core is what sets the game apart. Its base could best be compared with the Assassin's Creed franchise, due to the fighting and stealth mechanics consisting of many similar core features. The most unique feature that makes Shadow of Mordor stand apart is without a doubt the Nemesis system, which adds an incredible amount of depth to your enemies and your connection to them. Your enemies are divided by ranks, ranging from similar soldiers to captains, with each individual enemy having their own strengths and weaknesses, which you'll be able to exploit when taking them down. You'll be working up the ranks throughout the game, but failure and death also have their own consequences on your progress through the game. Dying in combat may mean the promotion of the Uruk who killed you, which will possibly let him replace an earlier enemy that you eliminated. This doesn't necessarily have to be problematic for your progress, but nonetheless, it definitely shows that this core mechanic isn't all about rewarding the player, but also punishing them for their failures. Combat in the game is pretty straightforward, though timing is key. Prompts for dodging and evading attacks are shown throughout combat, and whilst these are only suggestive actions, ignoring them is going to cost you. During combat itself, there are two main ways to take your enemy down. Either take them down by hitting them repeatedly during the combat itself, or finish them off whilst they're stunned on the ground, which can be problematic if you've got more enemies around you to interrupt you during these finishes. The implementation of stealth in the game is pretty robust, and whilst you're not given a huge array of options, it's enough to warrant a stealthy approach to many of the missions. Taking out specific enemies especially can be a very rewarding experience should the situation allow it. During one of the main missions, I was given the task to kill one of the captains, and after finding out his weaknesses, I chose to take a different approach to what I originally planned. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor provides the player with about 20 main story missions, though there is a wide array of side missions available that will make your gameplay experience much more robust and lengthy. But the Nemesis system will probably be a more attractive reason to revisit the game for some players. The side missions offer a decent variety, and sometimes it may be nice to take a breather from the story and simply cause some havoc amongst your enemies, which is pretty rewarding in its own right. Conclusion. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor may be one of the biggest surprises of the year so far. Offering incredibly robust and fun gameplay, along with a detailed world of lore and characters, this title doesn't only have the right to be called a great Lord of the Rings game, but a great game in its own right. Its only drawback is that it may be held back somewhat in favour of cross-generation programming.